Hi everyone, back for another video. This is going to be an interesting one. It's going to be pretty deep and out there. But before I continue, I do want to give credit where it's due. Explain what actually triggered this in me. It was watching Hocus Focus with Thomas Sheridan and Sarah Mondini, if that's how I pronounce her name. Apologies if not. Basically, they were talking about the Lesser Keys of Solomon. This was like, I think it was one of last year's ones near Christmas time. It was a Christmas special, I think. They were discussing the Lesser Keys of Solomon, and Sarah came up with a theory about the Bible, with the God of the Bible and the angels of the Bible being, all the hierarchies, and God underneath them. These being demons, basically. And then with the Lesser Keys of Solomon, the demons within there was something like 70 something. They were our old pagan gods, right? I mean, Thomas Sheridan has spoken also about this stuff, and others have, and I have, I think, in my videos. But if they are old pagan gods, I mean, they can be your angels as well. But because they were saying I know very little about the Lesser Keys of Solomon, and so I won't pretend I know a lot. But they discussed some of the qualities of these demons, and they didn't seem negative at all. They were kind of like light and dark. It depends, I guess, how you wield them. And what your intentions are, but each of them are like a power force with a certain quality that does a certain thing. And it got me thinking, maybe the Bible God and his angels are demons to us. Maybe not demons to everyone, maybe not demons to people from that culture, but maybe they are very unhealthy to us, right? They're very hostile. We just don't mix with them. And because another thing I'm thinking of, people blame often demons for bad behaviour. When they possess people, let's say, they blame them for evil. But what about thinking that it's all about the receiver, or a lot to do with the receiver, not just these demons? I mean, many of them, or some of them, are what we call evil. They're destructors. But maybe many of them, maybe more than half of them, are not destructive in their nature. It's just the receiver. It's just the mindset of the receiver and the depth of the soul, of the psyche of the receiver, into how they go about using their potential and energy to make change in the world. And this got me thinking. I've just got all my notes laid out here, so I'll be looking at those as I'm talking. It got me really thinking about Adolf Hitler. I don't know if I'll get banned for saying that word, doesn't matter. And his Third Reich. Did he try and take on these same kind of forces? And was he kind of was he an empty vessel for them? Like an NPC. So in a way, if, let's say, let's call these demons archetypal kind of forces within the big collective soul of a race. And they are called to that tribe, of that race, of that land. But if there is no conscious people, if people are asleep, there's no real awakened souls, or the people are empty, they'll come into an empty vessel and try to manifest their destiny through that person or people. And that's where it will get very ugly and very chaotic, because maybe the energy force, even though it has specific gifts and its own innate intelligence, it kind of operates kind of like a program, and it needs some depth and creativity of the receiver to kind of, is transmute it the right word, to integrate it so that it can be of good, of creative colour, and of something nourishing and positive and productive. If the person doesn't have that, then it's often very violent. It's too, just complete raw energy just spewing out the person. And I'm wondering, who was Hitler? And was he an unconscious vessel being filled with these forces like an NPC? Or was he not? Was he a very reasonably developed man with a good psyche, with a fairly deep soul? I mean, he was an artist. Many people have said he wasn't originally like a psychopath. He had imagination and he had a destiny, and maybe it was a 50-50 process, a two-way process. These forces noticed him, he noticed them, and they chose each other. But the problem could have been that he wasn't working with a very good collective soul group within the German people. For one, maybe the people that were surrounding him, these were a power elite, right, with money and influence. I won't go too into the people and everything. In the Roman Church, wasn't it, I think? And all of the others, oddballs he was surrounded with, if, let's say, he originally was, a good man with good intent, these were quite likely psychopaths, so quite likely empty vessels. So these forces would operate very chaotically and violently, perhaps, through these subjects, and eventually affect Hitler. Because if you're around that, and you don't have an exit where you can talk to somebody who's kind of like a bit more deeper, or a bit more sane, a bit more benevolent, then you might go mad and you might become like them, right? And secondly, when you look at Germany at that time, there was just so much group mass kind of hysteria, you can call it that. There was blind obedience. The people were desperate for a saviour, and that probably most likely came around because at that time that country was not in a good position. It was suffering under a power elite by the looks of it. It was being controlled, poverty, the elites who call themselves Jews owning the banks. So in a way there's truth to that. So and the First World War as well, not long after that, that traumatised everyone. That traumatised Europe, right? You have to consider that as well. So I'm thinking, when that happens, if a tribe, like a racial group collectively, if they feel that they're under threat by another culture with with an agenda to hurt them, exterminate them, etc., maybe there is this natural kind of psychic defense mechanism that kicks in, and these power forces arise to the surface if they have somewhat been disconnected to that people, and they offer themselves up again as a saviour to rescue, to defend that tribe and that race, on that land, and it's either a two-way process. You have to take that and say, yes, I accept, and I accept the responsibility. I will be the receiver, and I will be responsible for you, whatever happens. Or if there isn't anybody that's coherent, then they will just go into empty vessels, maybe, because it may be that it's these forces feel they're the program in them. So some of them are defending their tribe and their race. They say, if you can't do it, we'll do it, and we'll just try to obliterate the enemy. And it would be literally like an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. The elimination of one race or one culture, so that that race can be preserved. Maybe that's what happened as well. But was Hitler a conscious participator in this? And I think it could be likely that he was. Things come to mind when I was thinking of this a few days ago. One mythology I can connect with this is the story of the Lady of the Lake, which you probably heard of. Now, I won't go into detail, but basically, the lady arises ever so often, and she offers the sword to the chosen individual, but have to be chosen. They have to be kind of some reason morally right or selected. They have to have an attribute, be strong, fearless, or brave, or selfless, or something like that. Well, that's the gist I got in the story anyway. And so you have to take it. It's like you have to seize the moment and take it. She'll offer it, and then she'll disappear if she withdraw the sword. If there's no challenger to actually take it and take responsibility for this power force that the goddess is offering, right? And I can see perhaps what happened in Germany at that time. Symbolically, the Lady of the Lake offered Germany the sword, and perhaps Adolf Hitler took it. Maybe the spear of destiny can symbolize the sword, Maybe that's how he felt. Maybe that was the symbol that he identified with. But it's basically some same thing. So perhaps this has happened in the past, kind of cycles. But if you look at the story of the Lady of the Lake, the first person that had that sword, I believe, was Uther, not Arthur. He was called Uther Pendragon. He's the father of Arthur, and he was rightly given that sword. It was rightfully his. He was chosen by the goddess, and yet he was the opposite of Arthur. He was power hungry, and I guess I've read the story a long time ago. I watched the video DVD, originally came out in the 80s, the film Excalibur, and I don't know if it's actually accurate to the story, but I'm taking it's basically accurate. But in that, Uther was just power hungry. He was like Hitler, how he became in the bad light. What people perceive as Hitler. He was just basically into out for himself, not for other people. He used Merlin's magic to basically disguise himself as the husband of a lady that he wanted. Is it Igraine, the wife of some powerful duke? He used the magic to make her believe that he was the duke, and then he bedded her, and then she gave birth to Arthur, basically. And Arthur was totally different from his father. He was more, what was the word? He was more cultivated. He was deeper. He had, and he was about service to others, service to the tribe, not himself. He wasn't into, people just remembering his name just for being powerful, etc. Merlin was more impressed with him, and when I look at Merlin, you can almost see Merlin as one of these power forces, one of these demons, because he does seem quite indifferent to each subject that has the sword. He grants them their wishes, and he kind of won't even try to persuade them otherwise. Like he granted Uther the power to shapeshift into the Duke's husband when he wanted to. He just accepted Uther for who he was. When Arthur asked what was my father like, he said, oh, he was a great man, a strong man, a leader, fearless. He focused on the positives of Uther, even though he was a complete tyrant. But he said, he didn't last long because he was power hungry, impulsive, greedy, and these traits exposed him. His people didn't like him in the end, and he fell, very hard and very soon. But obviously Arthur was different. So it's almost like, these forces, if they're real, you can't blame them for the outcome. You can't blame them for the evil that they are capable of. It's the intent of the individual and the will of the individual, is what I'm saying. So I've gone through Hitler here, Lesser Keys of Solomon. It's my notes here. So the importance of reconnecting, fully reconnecting to our cultural roots, in being able to fully integrate these forces inside ourselves. And not blame these forces for what they can do. It's taking self-responsibility. I guess maybe the occultist that used to use these forces, Crowley. I mean, maybe that's what he was doing. I don't know. Maybe Crowley would have made a better Hitler, but maybe not. I don't know. That's a deep one, but maybe for another video. Let's see. A lot of this I covered. Lesser Keys of Solomon. I was something that came to mind as well was the story of the Incredible Hulk. If you look at that as a mythology, it's interesting that David Banner is a good man. He's not evil. He's actually wants to help humanity, I believe. I don't know, was he a scientist? I'll have to look that up. But David Banner wasn't evil, therefore the Incredible Hulk wasn't evil. Because inside was David Banner, basically, wasn't it? So he never killed anybody in all of the stories I watched, or he never killed an innocent person, and he never hurt an innocent person. As a matter of fact, he was often saving children and pets and things like that from burning buildings, and pulling disabled people out of cars and things like that, because that's what David would have done if he had the strength of the Hulk. So he was like semi-coherent, semi-conscious within the Hulk, but not fully. So the Hulk was still chaotic and still dangerous, and he didn't have complete control over that force. Far from it. That was the problem. That was the problem in that story. If only he could control the Hulk more, because he wanted rid of it, because it was just too much. He felt one day it's going to destroy everything. And you can see that Hulk as these power forces. But these power forces perhaps are too much for one person to take. So maybe that's what happened with Hitler as well. He took on all of this, and it became like an Incredible Hulk, and eventually it did self-destruct into a monster. Because that was the fear in the story with David Banner. It was too much to world alone, basically. That really got me thinking. I thought that's a good one with the Hulk. Taking on these forces alone, maybe this is not the way to go about it. What triggered the Third Reich? So I mentioned this before. Was it like a let's call it a psychic defense mechanism that's triggered within a racial group when they are under threat and face extinction, or even a perceived threat? And so with Germany at the time, it was the Jewish influenced power elite, not the average guy on the ground, but perhaps without any conscious souls integrating this force, it kind of goes solo. It kind of goes AWOL, and eventually it may have just functioned on its own, purely like an insect. It just said, let's just eradicate all of this culture as much as we can, regardless of the people at the top. It said, completely go on, extermination mode. Maybe if Hitler was done for, let's say Hitler was conscious and he was a romantic. I mean, let's not forget was he brave or was he stupid? I mean, he signed up for the First World War and he wanted to go back, so it wasn't that he didn't have any balls, or maybe he was an NPC, but he was very passionate, let's say, if he did have a soul, so it wasn't like he was a coward. But once he'd surround himself with these sharks, these psychopaths perhaps, eventually he withered away. He broke, he had a psychic breakdown with the drugs, and then it was just free for all. These forces were just unleashed, and then you had the subjugation of poor Jewish people, and they say that they were experimenting for science. Trust the science. Don't know if that will get me blocked, but there's a connection there. It was they were doing it for science and for the future and for the amazing, brave New World Order and all of this stuff. But they were just butchering people, just like he was, by the looks of it, almost like a medieval dungeon, just with a bit of science. It's almost like these forces had completely gone chaotic and were just self-destruct mode with no logic. They were out of control, basically, so it fell. If you don't have a conscious driver, then it all goes to hell. So that at that point, maybe there was no one at the driving seat, and that's when it fell. Like kind of with Uther and his army. Eventually that he got maybe some corrupt people around him, but Uther didn't last long. He created a lot of he made a big bang, but he went out fast. He fell heavy. So maybe this is what happened. So coming towards the end of this, I've covered Lesser Keys of Solomon, Lady of the Lake, Incredible Hulk. The other one was Quatermass. You could almost see or compare Germany at that time to a Quatermass event, in that if there weren't any, look at the German people. They were very robotic, they were very programmable, they were very into removing self-responsibility and following a leader. As history has repeated itself many times, it's not just Germany, I know. But that has a Quatermass element of, if there is some kind of psychic force, if people can't integrate it, then it will just basically fulfill its program very robotically and very violently, perhaps. Another thing is, when you look at Quatermass, in that movie, they saw this force. Well, this force was alien, wasn't it? It was Martians from Mars, right? Invading planet Earth and people, and kind of taking them over, or there was also a genetic link as well, in that on Mars there was a past civilization, advanced. They died out, but they somehow mixed or bred at one point with humans, something like that. So there was some kind of genetic link and a psychic link with the Martians and the humans. But if you want to look at it as symbolize it as these power forces, these pagan gods that are indigenous to their subjects, if because of influence by other cultures, say Christianity, the Abrahamic religions, if they are perceiving them as alien, as outside, then it can seem like an alien invasion, if you see what I'm saying. Therefore, when these forces arise and make themselves known and project themselves onto the subjects, the subjects can feel that they're being invaded by some alien force. Because they can't integrate it anymore, because they see it as not their self. They can't integrate their archetypes, they can't integrate these ancestral energies, you know. That's another way of looking at perhaps what happened in Germany, and perhaps other events of the past, you know. So what do we need to do? Because the other main concern is that we seem to be faced with a very similar situation, if not the same, right now in Europe. We are being, you know, Europe as a collective is being challenged. We've got the powers at the top, and we have the Abrahamic problem again. And there's that saying about kicking a dog. If you kick a dog so much, you put it in a corner, it's only going to do two things. It's going to roll down and die, fight back. Perhaps Germany felt like that kicked dog back then, and that's why you had that young man, you know, do his thing with a very unconscious, traumatized collective Germany in response of it. I don't know. We don't want to be that dog being kicked to death again, or feel like we are, and have the same primitive response.